Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Monday, the 17th day of June, 2024. And this morning, there are two really important stories that have come across the wire that put into perspective the different possibilities of what will happen with the war in Gaza, with the Hezbollah in the north in Lebanon, with Iran, and how it may all pan out. Now, what we do here, we first and foremost start with scripture and we emphasize where everything will end up. That we do know because the Bible has told us beyond a shadow of a doubt. What we don't know is how we're going to get there in the short term. And today we have these two stories that basically lay out the possibilities, and they're just possibilities now. We don't know how it'll all pan out, but we do know something was got to happen soon with respect to Hamas, Gaza, Hezbollah, and Iran. So let's look at these stories. First and foremost, the headline number one, Hamas's uncompromising demands, a glimpse into the terror group's strategic motives. In other words, what does Hamas ultimately want to gain? Now, we saw last week Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, came out with his demands, his uncompromising demands of what they expect to be, when all the dust settles, be the situation. And we're going to look at four key points, four key demands in the hostage release negotiations that revealed the broader aspirations for Hamas consolidating their power and influence. Okay, the first thing they want is irreversible cessation of hostilities, number one. For Hamas, the cornerstone of any deal is an agreement on ending the war, leading to the withdrawal of Israeli forces to the pre-escalation lines of before October 7th, and limiting Israel's ability to conduct counterterrorism operations in Gaza. This would allow Hamas's members to safely emerge from their hiding places, reorganize, restore their governance, and rebuild their capabilities. So Israel would not be able to resume hostilities after their cessation. In other words, if things stop and they agree to this, then they would not be able to resume hostilities. In such a reality, and after the Israeli war machine has been shut down, it would be impossible to simply flip a switch and restart the fighting as if nothing had happened. Even in face of ceasefire violations by Hamas, the international community would pressure Israel to resort to a proportionate response, which would mean it would just be same old, so what we had before. So again, number one, ending the war is what they want, and the withdrawal of Israeli forces to pre-escalation lines. That would leave them, of course, in power. So that's number one. Number two, no disarmament. At Hamas's disposal would not only be a network of tunnels spanning dozens of kilometers and actually 500 miles totally, what we're told at the beginning, but also the means to rapidly restore its local arms production industry. In other words, if the first thing fell into place, the first demand, then it wouldn't be long where we're back to the same old, same old. They would quickly, as we know, resupply. Combined with the substantial resources that would be introduced for civilian reconstruction, it is reasonable to assume that within a short period, Hamas could replenish its arms shortages. As long as Hamas remains the governing authority and the de facto ruler, no external party, either Arab nor international organizations, would be able to effectively monitor and prevent these risks. And that is a given. You can't allow them to remain in power, or it's going to be back to where we are at, say, square one. Regarding the prevention of smuggling from Sinai into Gaza, without effective Israeli control over the Philadelphia corridor and the Rafah crossing, Israel would be forced to rely on international arrangements, emphasizing security coordination with Egypt. And we find from past experience, this does not inspire a lot of optimism for the future. We've seen it happen so many places, so many times, where the international group comes in, like Lebanon, United Nations coming in the north between Lebanon and Israel. That's why they were called the United Nothing. Nothing happened with respect to stopping Hezbollah since 2006, or rearming and the such like. Same thing would happen with the South and Hamas. No matter what group you put in, sooner or later it would be the same old, same old. Now, a third thing they want is accepting the tunnel reality. The extensive network of tunnels beneath the residential areas in Gaza City provides Israel with justification for not allowing displaced Gazans to return to their homes, to continue considering these as combat zones, because they are combat zones. That's the reason for all these tunnels. Now, this could have served as a significant leverage for the Gazan population seeking to return to normalcy, pressuring Hamas. However, Israel's concession on this issue not only eliminates this source of pressure, but it also may be interpreted as tacit acceptance of this reality, which contradicts the concept of security demilitarization. In other words, as long as you have the tunnels, then you have the possibility of Hamas once again rearming, coming, back worse than ever, because as you recall, as far as they know, and this is some of the questions that are still being answered. At least half of the tunnels have not been destroyed. They've got a tremendous tunnel network. We talked about at the beginning, Israel thought there was something like 100 miles of tunnels under Gaza, and it turns out it's something like almost 500 miles of tunnels under Gaza. And it's going to take a long time to destroy all these, to investigate them. And it seems that haven't even got to half of them as yet. So accepting the tunnel reality is something Israel cannot allow Hamas to do, or the Gazans to do, because then again, you just continue to build up where you pick up where you left off. And finally, this is an interesting one, consolidating power in the West Bank and the Palestinian Authority. Now, Hamas has insisted that the militants, the terrorists from the West Bank that are going to be released as in a hostage deal will be returned to their homes rather than to Gaza. Israel want them all in Gaza. Now, Hamas wants them back in the West Bank. What does it do? It provides a second area of attack against Israel, not only in the south in Gaza, but here in the middle of the country, you have, on their east, you've got the Palestinian Authority actually right above Jerusalem. And so they want these terrorists to be there too. So they have a terrorist band above Jerusalem in Ramallah. And also they have one in Hamas, has one in Gaza. And so this would leverage and enhance their position to be able to attack Israel from a number of areas, not to mention in Lebanon with Hezbollah. So the article concludes, continued action against Hamas is necessary. Well, that's the understatement of the decade. For now, it is prudent to continue and intensify efforts to dismantle Hamas's infrastructure, increase efforts to target Sinwar and other field commanders, work to eliminate Hamas's leaders abroad who constitute the organization's political, media, and economic arm, for they are the ones who transform Hamas into a regional influential entity. And the article concludes, if we do not act against them, they will be central players in the reconstruction of Hamas in the Strip. And this is something Israel cannot allow to happen. So these are the demands of Hamas, number one, and number two, what Israel must do, not allow them to continue to exist, their military, not allow them to do the prisoner swap where you've got all these terrorists now in the West Bank. The idea is Gaza has to be completely taken over by Israel for an extended period of time. The border with Egypt, the corridor there where all the smuggling goes on, Israel must control it until the tunnels are totally destroyed and some type of system is set up to not let Hamas return. So that's number one. Now, the second big thing along this line, we're going to look at the bigger picture now. Will Iran join Hezbollah for an all-out war with Israel? That's the big question we've been asking. And if they do, let us again emphasize, as we're going to talk about, as we have talked about, and going to talk about it over and over again, if this does happen, a regional war with Hezbollah, Iran, Hamas, and the Houthis down in Yemen, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the groups that are in Iraq, as well as Syria, if this happens, if there's an all-out war with Iran fighting this with Israel, this would not be something predicted in Scripture. It is not Ezekiel 38:39. We have talked about this in detail. The Ezekiel 38:39 war is not Iran leading the charge. It's Russia leading the charge. Iran is listed, Persia called in the Bible, as one of the participants, one of the group, but they're not the leader of the pack. What's going on now, this is a total Iranian process here. Their proxies in Lebanon, their proxies in Yemen, their proxies in Iraq and Syria, they're the ones controlling this. This is not a Russian operation. There will be a Russian operation, but this would not be it. So we don't want to make the mistake if a regional war does break out. And to answer this question, then it is not something predicted in Scripture. Don't let anyone tell you it is. If they say, well, yeah, this has been predicted in Scripture, what you always do is, well, really, where? And give us the specific passages, because it's very clear. It's a Russian leader, as we document in our book, Ezekiel 38:39, Invasion, Appendix 1, Rosh refers to that, is Russia. And also in our book, 25 Signs, we're near the end, we talk about who the players will be and who they will not be, where they're coming from. Now, just to mention, because we always have new people every day, these books are on our website, Educating Our World, 12 books on Bible prophecy. They're a free download, 65 books in total. Please take advantage of them. They're all free, and they give a very thorough explanation of what is happening and what will happen according to Scripture. So here's the second question. Will Iran join Hezbollah for an all-out war? The Middle East's worst kept secret is that Israel and the United States do not have a coherent plan if there is no hostage deal. This is evidenced with the Americans. On Wednesday, when Hamas essentially rejected the proposal from Israel and President Joe Biden, the Americans scolded Sinwar and then declared that there was still room for discussion. The trend in Washington shows complete dependency on an agreement with Hamas. Now, Washington obviously wants the war to stop. Everything is secondary, but this is not exactly how our superpower vision put forward, as the article says. But after providing support for 7 months, longer than for any other Israeli war in the past, Biden has his own political considerations. So here's the big story. For Israel, the main battlefield is shifting from the south to the north, as we mentioned. The defense establishment and Defense Minister Gallant are determined to try to return the tens of thousands of Israeli residents to the north before the school year starts in September. This requires a determined attempt, militarily or otherwise, to stop Hezbollah's attacks. And as we see, again, this lays it out real nicely. 3 possibilities. Number 1, ceasefire and quiet. The first possibility is the IDF, which it finds unappealing, is that the war in the south will stop, Hezbollah will cease fire in the north, and quiet will be answered with quiet. Or a sort of bluff arrangement will be established, like the withdrawal of Hezbollah forces to some 8 kilometers from the border. Netanyahu has expressed fears of a war with Hezbollah in his daily briefings to the media he gave on the cabinet's decision as early as October 11 not to launch a surprise attack on Hezbollah. Now, this was against the position of the Chief of Staff and Defense Minister Gallant. He wanted a surprise attack on Hezbollah. Netanyahu said no. All right, now what's the problem with this first possibility? The problem is there's no indication that the war in the south will stop, one that will allow Hezbollah to climb down from its persistent attack on Israel. Okay, well, here's the deal. As long as this battle goes on in the south, Hezbollah has promised to go ahead in the north, continue on. We saw yesterday the fact that they're wearing the red bandanas now. There's a video that's come out seemingly indicating there might be an invasion soon of Israel in the north from Hezbollah. And so the idea of a ceasefire and quiet doesn't seem like a possibility right now. How about the hostage deal and an operation in Lebanon? A second possibility is an agreement in the south, including the return of the hostages and using the window to initiate a military operation in Lebanon, one that will enforce the implementation of United Nations Security Resolution 1701, which goes back to 2006, which significantly pushes Hezbollah away from the border with Israel. Now, the IDF favors this option because the deal would free up forces from the south to fight to be ready to fight in the north if that was possible. However, here's the problem again. The political feasibility of this occurrence is low. Those who stop the war in the south do not usually do it to start another difficult war in the north. The third possibility, shifting focus to the north. And this seems is what's going to happen. The third and most likely possibility at this point is that will be no agreement in the south. We don't see that happening at all. But war there will essentially end in some sense. Israel has said by the end of this month, they should have most of their goals in the short term met. If they're in control of the border, if they're in control of central Gaza, then they can just do, kind of mop up action. That's going to take a long time, but they're keeping Hezbollah at bay because what's doing in the south with Gaza and Hamas. But the IDF will transfer forces and resources to the north for a short operation that would severely harm Hezbollah and lead hopefully to its withdrawal from the border. So that's probably where we're at. They're still going to be fighting in the south, no agreement, but the north, they have to shift the focus there. Short challenge, a short war. And in essence, it lies the next question. Will the arrangement achieved after such an operation be significantly better than any limited arrangement reached a day before an escalation? In other words, will this be a better situation? And then, of course, there's the big question. Will Iran join in? If they join in, then all bets are off. Then they've got a war with their proxies totally surrounding them. It will indeed be a regional war. It seems other countries must come in and help. We'll see about that, the United States, others, but it would be the worst possible scenario for everyone. but this is highly likely. So will Iran and its proxies eventually attack Israel and together? Now Iran has stayed out of it so far. They had that one attack on the weekend. Remember that when they attacked Israel with everything they had and really did basically nothing. But that was not coordinated with the Houthis in the south. It wasn't coordinated with Hezbollah in the north. And this is something still possible in the future. So here's the bottom line. We've listed these possibilities again on our YouTube page. We have them all lined up and listed for you there, so you can look at it, download it, print it out, however you want to do this, so you can understand this, because this is where we're at right now. These are the possibilities we're looking at in the future, and literally God only knows which of these are going to take place. So today, as we begin a new week on the 17th day of June, we see where we're at. We see the demands of Hamas. We see the different possibilities what Israel will do. And we see the possibility also of Iran looming over everything, possibly using all of these proxies and attacking Israel at once. And if that happens, then God help the world. All right, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.